What's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we've got some awesome information for you guys, but before we get into that, please make sure you hit that like button and also subscribe if you're someone new. Now let's first start off with SEGA, because they have a drastic change to their corporate policies in terms of what they're going to be enacting with their video gaming. Now I've talked about this before when it comes to Persona and when it comes to their other franchises and how they need to branch out and embrace that there's multiple systems and fans that want to play their games across different platforms and bring back some of the classic IPs that people want to see. And it does seem like they are once again admitting that they did make some mistakes in the past, because they have a drastically different business plan at this point than they had, let's say, 3 or 4 years ago, which I've talked about numerous times on this channel, from Persona needing to go multiplat to other types of games as well, and they're dipping profits because SEGA is one of the most historic companies in the world, and they have some great IPs, and there's no reason why they're not doing better than what they are. They're a publicly traded company. They need to make sure that they make more money, and what they're doing right now isn't working for what they want to do for their shareholders and for the company itself. So in a recent financial fiscal year earnings call and all that, SEGA has pretty much overhauled what they plan to do going forward. Now here you guys are seeing a slide from their investors meeting where they talk about the utilization of IP assets. IP, of course, stands for intellectual property. So there are games that they do have that they own. Holds a large number of globally recognized IP, utilizing these IPs after careful examination. So they once again say, hey, look, we have these IPs. We can use them in certain ways. We can bring them back in certain ways. So here are the examples of their IP: Phantasy Star, Sonic, Total War, Football Manager, Yakuza, Persona, Shin Megami Tensei, etc. And these are examples of the active IP. So these are games that they just do for the most part. You'll see normal sequels and everything. But then if you look over here, they say examples of past IP groups, including dormant IPs. So you have Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, Space Channel 5, Rez, Panzer Dragoon, Knights, Shinobi, Virtual Fighter, Altered Beast, House of the Dead, Streets of Rage, Soul Hackers, etc. Now some of those they've brought back, they've outsourced a little bit. I know House of the Dead remake is coming. They also have Streets of Rage, that's already out. They've already talked about Virtual Fighter a bit more, and also Panzer Dragoon, once again, that was remade. So there are some things that they're doing, but there's more Panzer Dragoon that they can do, so they can do more though. And then you see that little asterisk that they say under examination of which IP to utilize. So they're currently looking at what they want to do from all of those IPs right there. But one thing that I don't like is that they did not include Skies of Arcadia, which is just sad. I think that they're just done with that. They didn't include Skies of Arcadia on there. SEGA, please. But anyway, here is an arrow where they say what they want to do. They want to remaster, convert past titles to HD animation, remake, significant addition of new features while maintaining gameplay of the original game, and reboot, reconstruct to a new game while maintaining look and feel of the world of the IP. So essentially you have like the remastered stuff that we've seen before from SEGA, where they kind of bring out like an HD version of the game. So Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne HD Remaster, that would be one of the titles like that, or a remake would be something to where they go a bit more, right, where you're actually redoing the thing, but it maintains what the game is about. They're not just taking it and putting it over with a glossy coat of paint. And then of course reboot would be like a FF7 remake, right, where you're completely changing the things around in terms of how it worked, but maintaining what people loved in terms of the look and feel and stuff. So I feel that this is a solid plan, but I feel that this plan is about, I would say, 5 to 6 years too late. This plan should have been enacted back in like 2014 or something like that, or before then. This pretty much proves that SEGA needs to do a bit more. Atlas needs to do a bit more. They have been mismanaged. They have mismanaged the Nintendo Switch to an absolute, like, insane amounts of level, where you have guys like Square Enix, you have guys like Capcom making absolutely insane amounts of money on the Nintendo Switch and on multiple platforms, and then you have SEGA that is picking and choosing where they're going to release certain games and having some exclusives here, then no, not that game there, and doing all this weird stuff and not remastering their past titles, not remaking things, not doing enough, and it's kind of showed. Their earnings and their sales have been dipping for what they have with all these IPs. There definitely should have been a few of these classic IPs that it should have been rebooted at this point. If you consider going back to, like, let's say the 7th gen, and many of these franchises have just been dead, I mean, there should have been at least 1 or 2 of these games here that should have came back in the past 10 years when it comes down to it. Like, should have been remade or came back in a larger sense or scale. And I know that they've done some stuff like on the Wii Nights, and they've done some things, but not in the HD era when it comes to things. A lot of these games have just been dead for quite some time, but some of them getting some play here and there. But I think the biggest thing here is definitely with Shin Megami Tensei, Persona. These franchises as turn-based old school RPGs definitely need to be multi-platform, and Sega needs to think of a way. Sega and Alice need to think of a way to where they can optimize their engines and optimize what they're doing and have multi-platform development and it not be a problem, because there's no reason why there shouldn't be Persona multi-platform based on what we know, because there is no actual proof of there being some type of super exclusivity clause or anything like that with the games, as we've gotten Persona 5 Strikers, as we've gotten Persona 4 Golden on PC. I think it's just Sega being Sega at this point, and this might be the turning point to where Sega can kind of move things and shift it and get with the times and get with what they need to do in order to be a hugely profitable company like a Square Enix and like a Capcom when it comes down to it, and the underutilization of their IP and taking advantage of the strengths of what they do, which would be the Nintendo Switch, especially in Japan, has hurt them in the long run. But we'll see here. We've got a fresh generation with some new consoles into the mix here. Nintendo Switch starting it out. Then, of course, we have the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. Let's see what happens there. There's been some rumors about Persona 5 Game Pass, which would completely dispel the whole there's some type of crazy deal with Sony or anything like that. So I do feel that could expand to more platforms. Maybe it's PC, Nintendo Switch, Xbox. So I think that should be a good thing. Obviously, they're doing more with the Yakuza franchise and making that more of a multi-platform now, and they're also doing like the Lost Judgment. That game, it's going to be multi-platform. It's going to try to launch simultaneously. They're doing better things, and I hope, based on what we've been hearing too with some of the rumors with Sonic, they can get that franchise back on track. But once again, it kind of proves what I've been saying for pretty much the past 2 years now when it comes to Sega and what they need to do. So we'll see what happens going forward in the future. Now, what are your thoughts on this, guys? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, now we're moving on to some Nintendo Switch leaks / rumors that's going on. This is from Zippo. He had a big blog where he went over a number of different things, and for the sake of time, I can't go over everything he has to say. I'll be going over some other things, but I'm going to start off with two of the big franchises that I know you guys are very excited about and want to hear more about, and that is Fire Emblem and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. So let's first start off with Fire Emblem and what Zippo has to say on this rumor here with it, because it's kind of lined up with some of the videos that I've talked about and maybe a thing or two that I have heard. So let's talk about Fire Emblem first. Now, he says, quote, "I'll be frank, I'm not much of a Fire Emblem guy, but I'm seriously impressed with how much the franchise has grown in the last 5 years. It's become a pretty big deal for Nintendo, and I hope that continues." Now, from what I've heard, Intelligent Systems has been working on a Fire Emblem title that they're developing separately from Three Houses on their own that is very close to nearing completion. While I haven't been told this part as of this writing, the fans seem pretty sure that this is going to be a remake of the Japan-only Super Famicom title, Genealogy of the Holy War. This makes total sense to me, and it would serve as a nice in-between title while Koei Tecmo works on a follow-up to Three Houses, given that it's nearly complete. An E3 announcement is incredibly likely, so there is a lot to unpack there, because the first part seems just more like fans are speculating on what could be next, and then the next part is that Koei Tecmo follow-up to Three Houses, given that it's nearly complete. So he's kind of saying there is a number of things here. We could be getting a Fire Emblem remake here, so Fire Emblem echoes Genealogy of the Holy War, or Fire Emblem echoes the Holy War, and then we can also be getting a follow-up to what we saw with Fire Emblem Three Houses as well from Koei Tecmo, because what you guys have to realize is that the main developer behind Fire Emblem Three Houses, yes, there was some Intelligent Systems staff on there working on it, but Koei Tecmo did a lot of the heavy work while the main staff of Intelligent Systems was working on something else. Maybe that remake of Genealogy of the Holy War, or maybe a brand new Fire Emblem, or maybe just something different in general. But either way, there's more Fire Emblem on the way. That's pretty much what's going on here, if I'm reading this correctly. Now, I haven't heard anything about a Fire Emblem Three Houses follow-up. He says given that it's nearly complete, or maybe he was tying that back to what they were discussing with the Intelligent Systems-based Fire Emblem game. But either way, I mean, it could go either way, or it could be one of the other, or both. We just have to kind of wait and see, but there's definitely something brewing on the Fire Fire Emblem front. I think an Echoes title would be fantastic, so we'll see if that actually does happen with the game. Now, another thing that I want to talk about here, which you guys are probably going to be super excited about, is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. So The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, I want to talk about this because it does seem like this game probably isn't going to be a 2021 title, but we have some more information on it. So here is what he has to say. Breath of the Wild 2. Many are wondering if this is the year it releases. After all, it was announced about 2 years ago, and I'm gonna go and say no. If any Nintendo game was affected by the pandemic, it was this one. From what I've heard, the game is nearing completion, but a release by the end of the year just isn't seeming feasible. The game needs a bit more time, and with last year in mind, that's entirely understandable. What I foresee Nintendo doing at E3 is finally busting down the doors on the game and giving fans and the press tons of details on it with a spring 2022 date attached to it, but that's just my prediction on it. So I think I have to agree this isn't any super solid information outside of him saying that it needs some more time. It's probably going to come out next year, but I think a lot of the fans and just press in general have already kind of wrote that, saying yeah, it's probably going to be a next year title, considering the scope and scale of what they probably want to do with Breath of the Wild, following up one of the best games ever made, in my opinion. So I do think that probably the pandemic and also the logistics of making a Zelda game, which are some of the craziest things that goes on at Nintendo, probably got in the way of this game kind of wrapping up. And if you look at it, remember, Breath of the Wild 1, that game definitely had some issues here and there at launch, and they had to patch it to kind of make sure that things ran a bit better and everything. So I think they probably want to avoid that this time and release the game definitely in a better state, considering it's a follow-up, and I'm not sure if reviews will be as nice this time around. That's the last thing that you want, is a game to still have the same issues as the first game, especially when you've gotten more time to make it. So I do feel that they want to make sure that they shore that up, but also just getting the mechanics, the gameplay systems, the new ideas, everything runs and looks great. So I feel that this is going to be a big game for Nintendo. They want to make sure that they do not mess this one up. So I can definitely see a spring 2022 type of release for this game, but I think that it's going to be crazy at E3 if we do get this press blowout, if this rumors are correct and we do get a press blowout of this game. That is going to be a lot of fun to cover and just to see, because it's The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It is a follow-up, and it's something that I know that Anuma-san and his team are just going to innovate and bring out the best when it comes to what Breath of the Wild brought to the table. So I'm very excited to see where they go from there. So what are your thoughts on these topics here when it comes to Sega and when it comes to Fire Emblem and Zelda? Things are heating up a bit, guys. Let me know in the comment section below. All right, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all the latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.